you get a lot out of this demonstration, and we look forward to actually in the second part of the workshop next week, cutting your designs and getting those out to you. Seeing some names and maybe some seem familiar. Give it a little thumbs up if you've used the Makerspace before we shut down. Awesome, awesome. Seeing a lot of thumbs, almost half. A little bit about the Makerspace before we get into the actual workshop. We are again part of the Learning Centers, and the Learning Centers aims to provide technology based learning experiences and a technology-based community in which we provide in the Makerspace like digital fabrication such as laser cutting, 3D printing, CNC routing, and a host of other resources, hand tools, sewing, and we're expanding even more with a new Makerspace that's opening up in the new residential halls. So that's going to be exciting. We look forward to opening up in fall if nothing changes, and if we stay on this positive trend. We'll have a brand new Makerspace, which is about 3 times as large as the current space, and a lot of new offerings. So look forward to seeing a lot of you in person once we get back on campus. Okay, without drawing this out too much more, we'll just go ahead and jump in, and I'm going to start sharing my screen. Let me open up Illustrator first. So I was told that it seems like most of you were able to download Illustrator just fine, which is a good thing. It's really cool that you all have access to this. Actually, I got access to it personally too, not just at work. So that I was excited about that. There we go. That's the one. All right. So if you haven't played around with this yet, I'll just go through kind of some of the basics of this intro kind of opening screen. On the bottom below, if you've played around with it and you've opened up files and created files, there will be quick links to those files. But at the top, it's just kind of your generic formats. So in Illustrator, you can do graphic design, you can do 2-dimensional design for digital output or digital fabrications, such as what we're going to do. So there's a number of different options you can choose. What we're going to do is just kind of create a new document over on the left. And then for our dimensions of our artboard is what we're going to create here. We're going to create the dimensions of our laser cutter bed. And so if you go over on the right-hand side for width, we're going to select 24 and I'm in inches. So if you need to toggle that, go ahead and toggle that right here. And height, I'm going to change that to 12. One important thing before you go ahead and hit create is your color mode. It should be in RGB. Now, RGB, that's going to be your option for a lot of like digital design. If your intent is to post it on the internet or anything web or screen based, CMYK is going to be for anything that's like print based. If you don't have that option, it's going to be in advanced options right here. So RGB color, that is so that our machines, such as our laser cutter or vinyl cutter, can recognize those colors and interpret them as paths to follow. A little bit more about that later, but all you need to know is be in RGB color mode. And raster effects can be in high 300 PPI. And I'm going to go ahead and hit create. And again, we talked about this earlier, but Diantha, Megan, Rithika, if you'll see anything in the chat, questions, feel free to just interrupt and let me know. Perfect. So our goal, our hope is to be able to get you all to design earrings or a little keychain, and then get that to you after our second workshop. So Diantha was kind enough to provide some examples. I'm just going to open that up in kind of the background. If you want to open up the file that you already have or somewhere, something that you've downloaded, you can go to File, Open. That's in my downloads. I'm going to go to Shapes. That's one of them that Diantha sent over. And so no matter our kind of color that we have pictured, or you know, how many pieces we're going to integrate in different colors, your basic designs for output is going to look pretty simple. They're going to be simple lines and maybe some block colors. So we have to train ourselves to kind of think of shapes and lines as kind of operations versus like design elements. So a lot of times what we see on the screen isn't going to reflect what the actual object is going to be. All right, so I'm going to just run through the layout here. Your top bar here is kind of informational. That will change as you select different tools. See, I select the text and it's changed. So that is information about your tools and kind of options for those. On your right-hand side, you're going to have a bunch of other tools that help you kind of create layers, alter your artwork a little bit. And then on the left-hand side, these are kind of your main tools to create shapes, manipulate shapes, erase, and other stuff like that. If your layout doesn't look like mine, in the very top right up here, there is something called, this is your kind of like how your screen will look. I like to operate in Essentials Classic because, well, when I learned Illustrator, that was kind of the basic layout, and it's kind of what I'm used to. As you explore Illustrator a little bit more and you start using it for other options, maybe strictly graphic design, maybe you want something that's like painting or printing and proofing, and you can play with those, and those layouts will change. So yeah, so your screen changes as you toggle through different ones. But again, I'm going to use this Essentials Classic, and if you want to click that one to follow along, that will be easiest. So we're not going to go through all of these tools, but we're going to go through most of them, and at least just the ones to get us laser cutting. Your top two arrows over here, they're different. You've got a selection tool and a direct selection tool. Now, if you just kind of hover over them, the titles come up. And then also the ones that have a little arrow on the bottom right, if you click, left click and hold, gives you the option to kind of select other options within those tools. So your selection tool and your direct selection tool have different functions. I'm going to jump real quick and draw a rectangle without kind of explaining it much. And we'll go back into it, how to kind of color that. But I just want to demonstrate. You don't have to follow along too much. Your selection tool allows me to click and hold and drag items and move them. It allows me to move and scale basically, and rotate. If I hover off of a corner, I can rotate. Your direct selection tool now allows me to edit it a little bit more finely. So I can select anchor points. So all this artwork is vector based, meaning it has points and lines and directional values. And the color is basically just an appearance. But now at these points called anchors, I can select individual anchors and manipulate those. So that's the benefit of switching between your selection and direct selection tools. And those are their main differences. So one is kind of general transformations. The other one is a little bit more fine-tuned transformation. You can think of it kind of that way. Okay, let's jump back into that shapes tools. So you have a rectangle. That's usually what you'll start with. If you click and hold, left click and hold, you'll see there's other options such as rounded rectangle, ellipse, polygon tool, star tool, flare tool. These are your general shapes. If I choose the rectangle tool, left click and hold, I can drag and create a rectangle however size I want. You can also just left click, and then you have the option to input values. So you can create a rectangle or shape with whatever dimensions you want. Now, if I want a perfect square, I'm going to hold down Shift, left click and hold, and then you see that it drags into perfect square. So that is going to be true with other shapes as well. I want them totally uniform. I can click and hold. So this is the ellipse tool. Now I'm making a circle, but I just want a freeform ellipse. I can do so that way. Now, if you haven't altered the color of yours are probably just showing up as lines. So this will be a quick, easy option to illustrate fill and stroke. And I just deleted all my shapes by using my selection tool, clicking, dragging, selecting everything, and hitting delete. So that's a quick way to get rid of objects and shapes. So there's a number of ways and places in which you can alter and tweak color. So one quick way is this bottom left over here. You can do no fill. So this is your fill. It's a solid box, and then your stroke is usually indicated by kind of a frame. You can also alter it up here. You have some quick swatches as options, but then over on the right-hand side, this little palette here gives you more control. So I can click on that, and I can click on fill or stroke, and that will change the color. Now, stroke thickness basically is controlled over here, top right under where it says select, this area. And I can bump up my stroke. And again, these are just kind of appearances. So, and this isn't going to matter too much for what we're doing, but I want you to be aware of these so you know what they do. And again, I can tweak the color of all those. I can select fill and change the fill colors. I can also double click on fill or stroke, and it'll give me even more kind of freedom to control those colors. All right, I'm going to go ahead and delete this. Some other tools that are fun and essential is the pen tool. Pen tool really allows me to create freeform shapes. So I can click, and that creates one anchor point. Click and create another anchor point, and those will be connected by a line. And I can close that shape off by clicking where I started. Go ahead and delete that. So you can create straight lines, or I can go ahead and click and hold. And now you see it's starting to create some curvature. You can hold. You can hold. And so these are called handles. And the longer the handle, kind of the more it affects the curve. Shorter the handle, less curvature there is. So those are fun. That's a quick way to create more organic shapes, freeform shapes. And then you can always kind of split it up between doing straight lines and curved lines. So you can play around with that a little bit if you aren't already doing so. So this is just kind of, if you want to design on your own, these are some basic tools. You have a line tool as well. And I encourage you all to kind of just explore with this after this demonstration. to get familiar with these tools. But if you don't have kind of, maybe don't feel like you have the, you're not skilled in design yet, you haven't got a firm grasp of some of these tools, there's a quick way to kind of create cool designs that you will enjoy. And our goal is to get you earrings or keychains or something that you'll enjoy. And you won't be like, oh, great, I spent, hour and a half on this demo and still didn't learn to design. But I really want to laser cut something really cool. It's kind of a quick way to do that. And that is just finding artwork that you like, that you enjoy online. And so quick Google searches of images you enjoy, you like, a quick Google search of a shape. So if I look at Deanta's shapes over here, she may very well have created these on her own, but it's also very easy to just go ahead and find these shapes online and do what's called an image trace. And we'll jump into that shortly. So don't get discouraged about kind of me rushing through any of these tools and stuff. And if you don't feel like, oh, I can't design what I want. So I'm going to go explore the tools a little bit more, and then we'll jump to kind of finding designs and then tweaking them and making them your own. Okay. So again, I'm going to play with some tools, and I'm going to create a couple shapes. Let's try to mimic or mirror kind of this shape here. So I'm going to start with, well, first I'm going to change my colors here. Okay. So I'm going to start with a circle. I'm going to press Shift and drag so it's a uniform circle. I'm going to take my stroke back down, make it smaller. Okay, and now I'm going to create another circle. Shift, but it's a little bit smaller. And just for visual sake, for you guys to kind of see what's going on, I'm going to make that white. Still have that black outline. Now I'm going to open up another tool that isn't open. And so I want you all to do that if you're following along. Go to Window and come down to Pathfinder. The Pathfinder tool allows me to combine shapes, subtract shapes from one another, split them, do a number of different things. So I'm going to take this small circle and overlap it over on larger circle. And with my arrows on my keyboard, I'm going to kind of play around, move it around until it's somewhere I like. Okay, so somewhere like that. And so what I've done was place the white circle over the black circle. I'm going to select them both. If you go to that second tool there in Pathfinder, that's minus front. So it's going to subtract what I laid over top of that shape from the back shape. And now it's created its own shape. So we've lost the small circle and we're left with that. So Pathfinder is a really versatile, powerful tool in Illustrator to quickly create shapes from other shapes. And so I didn't have to, I could take my pen tool and, if I get a little bit more skilled, create something similar. Oops, away. It's just going to be wonky. Right, but you may not get the results you want. You can always go back in with your direct selection tool and start to tweak things, get them a little bit closer to what you want. But you can see the power of that Pathfinder tool. If you really want kind of uniform shapes and stuff like that, it's a really quick way to do it rather than playing around and trying to draw it out on your own. This whole thing. Okay, and star. There was a star in the center. Luckily, I've got a star tool here. So I can click and drag and kind of create a star. You also have the option to just click once and select the number of points, select radius, internal radius and outside radius. So radius 1 is going to be outside of the points. Radius 2 is going to be the inside points. And I can alter that if I want. Oops. I'm going to go back to a 5-pointed star. And drop it there somewhere. Now, on the Anthus design here, it's got a little loop there, and that's obviously, you know, if you want a keychain, it's put your key ring on. If you want to make them earrings, it's to put your earring hooks on. Just got this line right there. Anthony, you want to share why you did that little line?
Oh, well, I put the line there to connect the star to the moon. So when you cut it, it's one piece, because if you cut it as is, then it would be separate. And you need all of like the pieces in the one design to be attached to each other somehow.
Yeah. So that, you know, that may have been very obvious to some people, but as you know, it's a new thing that we're doing. And I've got a quick example of something that's been laser cut. So when you're laser cutting, I have a couple examples here. We're cutting out of kind of materials. This is thin plywood, about 1/8 of an inch. This has just been engraved on the surface and then cut out of a rectangle. This is some acrylic here. It's kind of a translucent, transparent blue acrylic. I don't know how much detail y'all can see on this one, but you can see as you cut away, those shapes fall out. So this was actually a good example because someone didn't really intend to cut out all those shapes. They wanted the butterfly, but they thought that they were going to get something else. You know, they went back and then recut it and put an outline around this so that they did still get this kind of cut out shape of the butterfly. But it was a learning experience. And so that happens sometimes. And especially with text, if we're laser cutting text, sometimes, you know, your little inner pieces drop out. And so what this thing is called is a bridge. And so if I'm doing something like an eye, you know, you got to create a little bridge to connect that little dot so that it all stays together. So going back to my example, there's a number of ways I can create that little bridge. Quickest way is probably to just go back and create a rectangle. And I tend to like to make my different components like off the side so that I can kind of place it, see if it looks right. I can tweak it if I need to. Sometimes when you layer them over each other and you start to try to select things, you're selecting other parts. But yeah, so, you know, as you learn the program a little bit more, you'll kind of work the way you like. Zooming in, zooming out, I can use Control plus, Control minus. If you're on a Mac, I guess it's going to be Command plus, Command minus. That will allow me to zoom in, zoom out. Now let's not forget. So when we're cutting, I'm going to take away the fill on all of these. When we're cutting, our laser follows your outside lines. So placing something over there. Now, while visually, when it was all filled, it looks like it's one shape. So that is where what I meant by earlier when I said, you know, we have to start to not think of like color and line so much as design, but color and line as kind of operations. And so if I were to cut this, you would get 1, 2, this little tiny little piece, 3, 4, 5 different shapes, and they all fall apart. And so that is also an important reason why we use the Pathfinder tool. So now I can select all of those. And using this Unite tool, I now have one united shape there. So yeah, just don't forget about that. All your pieces need to be together and united together. And then last little bit is creating that hole up top. I'm going to use an ellipse tool in similar style. I'm just going to go ahead and create a circle. Create another interior circle. And it's off to the side, but that's okay. I'll just use my arrow tools to kind of move it into place. I'm going to select those two, and I'm going to do the minus. I'm going to move it up a little bit and select all of those and do unite. Okay. So that's a quick shape. It's fairly, easy geometric shapes, easy to design. Say I have a favorite cartoon character or something, and I don't want to sit there and draw them out. How can I do that? All right, I'm going to open up, change my share screen here real quick, but I'm going to open up just Google Chrome.
Charlie, we have a question.
Yes.
From someone. So
sure.
they asked if their piece needs to be connected like this, if they can have multiple colors on one piece.
Okay, so multiple colors. Multiple colors are possible. So say, going back to this example, say this was cut out as a butterfly and wasn't rectangle, and then I wanted like multiple colors within interior of these spaces. I could then take the same file and cut all these out of a different color acrylic and then pop them in and glue them together. So if I do want multiple shapes in different pieces, then yes, you would cut them separate. So go back over here and use steps. So maybe I want that. Okay, so maybe I want this piece to be the same as the moon. I can unite those. I want my star to be different. So you still have this little overlap section. What I'm going to do there in the transform tool, or I'm sorry, Pathfinder tool, is I'm going to choose this option, divide. Is that the one I want? Yeah. And now what that has done is it's united them all, it's joined them all together. I can double click, and now I can see it's created separate little shapes. So I can delete that interior piece, and then I got those. Actually, that's not the one I want. What I want is trim. I think I want trim. Yeah. What I want is to trim these. I'm going to place the star on top. So I can right click on my star and I can say, where is it? Transform. No, that's arrange, sorry. And I'm going to say bring to front. So that means it's going to be on the very top of all the art. And I'm going to select them both and do trim. Let's try that again. Maybe it's to the back. To back. Why? Oh, they've got to be filled. All right. Let's try that again. Okay, so I did that the opposite way I wanted to do. Star was supposed to be on the front. So I'll bring to front, select them both, trim. Okay, now I can just illustrate this. So yeah, there are ways to do kind of colors, set up your design so that you can have multiple colors. So say I want to cut the moon portion once out of one color and then the star out of another color, that is possible. So you'll notice after you use the Pathfinder tool, a lot of times it just joins them together. I can go ahead and right click and go to ungroup. So now they're separate. Okay. And then if I wanted to go ahead and laser cut this, then I can either create a new artboard. I go into that artboard tool. You don't have to know this too much right now. I'm just going to do it real quick. Another artboard, and say that's going to be another piece of acrylic, like a different color. Put that there. And so when I print, I'm just going to say, let's print from this artboard. Alternatively, you can leave everything on there, and if you're sending us a file, you can just kind of put some text and say, hey, I want this in yellow, or I want this in black. And you can just kind of label them. And then what we will do is I'll just drag stuff I don't want to cut. I'll say, okay, I'm going to print this first, drag this off my artboard, and do this in another color. So yes, there's a ways to get multiple colors. I hope I answered that question. It wasn't too long
And
of
how
an
do you
answer.
bind them together once you have your cuts?
How do we bind them together? So acrylic is a little tricky. It's super glossy, but you can always kind of rough up the edges that you plan to bind together with a little bit of sandpaper and use some epoxy, CA glue or super glue. That works also. That works as well. It tends to create what's called hazing on acrylic. So you get a little bit of a foggy, hazy surface. The best thing is this. So it's a solvent for acrylics. This is, I forget what this is called, but it's like, Weldon is the one that makes it. This is Weldon 40. And basically it just dissolves the surface of the acrylics. You push it together, and then after the solvent evaporates, they are then bonded together. So that is the best glue. We have some here. If you guys want to do multiple colors, it might be possible. I encourage you all to maybe go with a single color design in the beginning. But if you want to be ambitious, we can try to go that route too. Cool. All right. So I want a little bit more intricate design. I think everyone, Deantha, Megan saw me do this example already, but it's one of my go-to examples. I like Pokemon. Let's say I like Pikachu. I really don't. I don't know, but it's just something that's quick and comes to mind. Or maybe I do. Maybe I really do love Pokemon.
Sorry, before you get to that part, I think someone else had a question about how you connected the circular like hook on top.
Sure. So I can do that in a couple different ways. The circular portion, I've just created a circle. So I go to the left-hand side with the ellipse tool. If that's not there, click and hold, select ellipse tool. I can click and drag. I can hold shift to make a perfect circle. Zoom in a little bit more so we see what's going on. Now the order of it can go a couple of ways. I can subtract another circle from this one first and then combine it with the moon, or I can combine these two, the Pathfinder tool, and hit unite. And then I can come in and place another smaller circle on the interior there. Just using my arrows to get it in a place I like. And then selecting both objects, use minus front. Now those are connected. Again, my star is still separate. Again, if I wanted to tweak that and put that back, I'm selecting both and hit unite. Yeah. Does anyone else have any other questions about these? Anyone have any questions about any of these tools here that maybe you've been kind of wandering through? We have some time. We can explore a few more tools. But I would like to kind of show an example of just finding existing artwork and getting that ready for laser cutting. Okay, we will move forward. All right, I'm going to share my screen real quick, just my whole screen here. So I'm just going to open up Chrome, do a quick peek. I don't even know how to spell Pikachu. No. Is it a K? I have a feeling it's a K. I spelled it wrong. All right, images. Cool. Let's see. What do I like? Let's go with this one here. Actually, this is going to be a better example. All right. So I found an image. I'm going to right click on that image, save as, and hopefully, no, it's not. So it's a .html file there, cancel, so that's not a good one. I want a like TIFF or a JPEG. Those will be ideal. Let's just do this one. These are Etsy. How about this one? Stuff with a white background is also kind of ideal. Open image, new tab. Let's see. Yeah, it's a nice high-res image. So I'm going to right-click, save image as. That's fine. It's just going into my downloads. Save. All right. So I went back to Illustrator. I can go into File, Place, and find that download. Then I'm going to click on my artboard to drop it down. It's kind of large, so I'm going to scale them down. Scaling, so your selection tool. So if I just click on this corner and start scaling randomly, he's going to get all squished, stretched, right? So what I want to do is click on a corner and hold down Shift. So Shift is the kind of key way to make things universally, just keeping things proportional. So I scale proportionally by holding down Shift. If I want to rotate objects, I can hold Shift and it will rotate in 45-degree increments. So it's pretty good hotkey to know. All right. So when I click on a JPEG image or any kind of pixel-based image, so this is the biggest difference between pixel and vectors. So if I send this to the laser cutter, I will only be able to, it's called raster engrave. I can only engrave on the surface of the material. It will interpret colors of Pikachu, take the darkest color and engrave the deepest, take lighter colors, engrave really lightly. But I won't be able to get cuts, through cuts, because it's all pixels and it's not vectors that have a direction, a path, and anchors and stuff like that. So I need to create, if I want to cut him out, I need to turn him into a vector-based image. When you select a pixel-based image, such as a JPEG, you get this image trace option above. Mine shows up somewhere like right under help, so image trace. I'm going to click on that. It will generate something really quick just for out of the default settings. If I want to change those settings, right next to where it says view, just to the left of view, image trace panel. I'm going to open that up and I'm going to hit the advanced tab. And now we have different options. So the default mode was kind of black and white. I'm going to go ahead and say color. Okay, now it's generated some color. And I can choose how many colors. The palette is limited. That's fine. You can do full tone. This is kind of ways to kind of generate more art. I can play with something called the color, so I can choose how many colors. I can choose the paths, how tight fitting to the paths, how many paths there are, corners, etc. Noise. But really what I want is something more like, actually, this is fine. I'm going to go with this because really I just want the shape. And let's say I just wanted to cut out a yellow Pikachu. I don't care about the additional colors. This is fine. I'm going to go ahead and now clicking on the image, I can go ahead and press expand up top over here. Okay, so now it has created vector shapes for every single color. And again, if I wanted to do, multiple color designs, I can cut each one of these shapes out of different color acrylics and achieve this kind of look in this design. Or I'm really only concerned with kind of getting just a likeness of Pikachu. I can edit this to be like a single color. So I'm going to go ahead and tweak this a few ways. I'm going to double click in because these all joined together. Then delete a few things. Now, this might not turn out the way I like, but delete the black. And I'm going to use my eyedropper tool. I can do that by hitting I, or I can come on over to this little eyedropper. Now by selecting different color things, use the eyedropper, using hotkey I, and change the colors. And so now we're getting an idea of how maybe the Pikachu might look, all single color. The other thing is I can select everything, press I, and choose the color I want. Now, my background turned yellow. That's because I forgot something in image trace. And that was, I don't know if you can see it, it's kind of grayed out over here, but there is something in the image trace panel called ignore white. And what that does is it basically ignores the white areas and doesn't create a shape. So I can just double click on the background and delete that. But that might be something that will save you time, is to just ignore the white areas. He's looking kind of silly, but let's get rid of this little guy right there. Okay, and then maybe I want to stack it. Maybe I'm just doing still a single color, but I want this shape separate than the others. So I'm going to go ahead and use that Pathfinder tool and unite that shape. And then I'm going to unite all these, except for those. I'm going to hold Shift and select the things I don't want to get rid of them. And I'm going to unite those. Okay. I'm just going to get rid of these. I would spend more time on this, you know, cleaning it up, replacing these little bits that fell out, but just so you get an idea. So if I wanted to, it's kind of hard to visualize this. But imagine this as, you know, an 1/8 inch thick, and this being an 1/8 inch thick, and then kind of stacking those on each other. But I don't really have any material that would be behind his hand, connecting him to the body. They would only be side by side. So maybe I want to take my pen, fill in that area. And I also want to create an area where his tail connects. And then I can unite those in Pathfinder. Okay, so now when I throw it back on here, you see where the blue lines intersect my yellow shape. I can actually place one on top of the other and glue them together. So again, this is not really a 3D design tool. This is a 2D design. So you have to start thinking about, oh, how this will be interpreted in 3 dimensions. So similar to this piece here, these were shapes just kind of laid over each other when this person was designing this, and they kind of visualized, oh, when I stack my different cuts out over each other, this is gonna be how it ends up. So it takes some playing with and some, you know, getting used to, and just kind of learning what the machine does and running it a few times. But if you can picture it in your mind, how these shapes are gonna play with one another, that's one way to do it. Again, you could have gone the route of laser cutting each single color. But something about our space, we offer kind of free resources as much as we can. So like everyone here is going to get laser cut earrings or a keychain with materials that SWE has provided. We stock materials at times. Our budget has been cut severely because of the pandemic, so we don't have a whole lot of materials currently. But you know, if you want to come in and make a first project, we try to limit how ambitious it is so that we can provide the materials for you to do projects. But then, yeah, if you wanted a multicolor Pikachu, 5 different colors, we're gonna ask you to kind of provide those materials. And then, you know, the laser cutting, that's free. You learn how to 3D print with us, that's free. If you really know how to 3D print, but you don't have access to a 3D printer or filament, you know, to a certain extent, that's free. Again, if it's a really ambitious 3D print and you're just kind of coming in here to do a bunch of personal projects, and we ask that you start to provide your own filament. But if you're coming in to learn and just design and create some small things that are either functional, that are for class, that's as a gift, we'll provide material whenever possible. So let's see. Now let's go over, so now we got shapes. We know how to create shapes from art that we found. We know how to create our own shapes. Let's go over how to set it up so that we can output to the laser cutter, and some of the guidelines that you should know about. I mentioned earlier, so it interprets color in kind of value. So the darker, the deeper, more saturated the color is, the deeper the engrave is going to be. The lighter the engrave is going to be. Lines. Now, how do I cut all the way through? Okay, so let me go back a few steps. Oh. All right, good enough. Select this all. I'm going to go ahead and unite that shape. Okay. I'm going to do 0 fill. Oops. Select my shape here. Fill, no fill. Stroke. Just for visual sake, let's make it magenta here. Okay. Remember I had you set your document to RGB. So the laser cutter recognizes, well, it's not joined. The laser cutter recognizes only certain colors. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Only certain colors and interprets them as actions. So to actually cut through your material, your stroke has to be a strict RGB color, meaning it can be pure black. So 000 on the RGB kind of index here. It can be full red, 255. It can be full green, full blue, or a combination of two of them. So visually, yeah, it's kind of a cyan. It's a yellow, or it's a magenta. But it is comprised of RGB colors, basically. So for your sake, if you only have, say, one color acrylic that you're cutting out, I would say just make everything black. And you go in and double check that it's true black. So click on your stroke and make sure that it is 000. A lot of times when you, this black up here, you'll see it's not true black. It's a bunch of other values. So go ahead and select your artwork when you're done designing it and set it to 000. Say you're giving us instructions to cut another shape. I'm just gonna copy and paste this, Control C, Control V. I wanted to fill the mouth with like a red acrylic. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you guys, oops. Go ahead and tell you all to make that a different outline color so that visually I know and I can see that, oh, maybe you wanted this in a different color. Don't make it the color of acrylic that you want. Just make it a different color that will indicate that it's another cut, a separate cut. And then again, something that we talked about earlier, you can go ahead and use your text tool or type tool and say, I want that. I forget what colors we have available that Tantha and Rithka ordered, but I'm sure you all will let everyone know what colors are available. You can kind of just label what you want. And I'm not gonna, I won't engrave ink on it. I'll know. You can label things that way. Okay. Now, one last thing about the line weight. Stroke. Your stroke or your line weight here has to be 0.001. It's just a tiny little hairline, so it kind of starts to disappear. Anything thicker than that, the laser cutter interprets as an engraving. So it will just engrave on the surface rather than cut all the way through your material. So guidelines for cutting. Stroke 0.001. And the color of your outlines need to be one of the RGB colors. So a solid RGB color, solid red, solid black, green, blue, etc. Okay, so, all right, I have a Pikachu. I want him cut out. Say it's a solid color. I want to get a little bit of detail. At least want the nose. I kind of lost the nose earlier, so I'm just going to draw in a new nose. I'm going to use the pen tool. And I'm going to show you a quick way to do things, to generate shapes pretty quickly. But okay, I don't want her nose to be a perfect triangle. I want it to have some sort of curvature to it. So I can always edit those in the pen tool. If I click and hold, there's this anchor point tool. So now I can change these anchor points to be curved points. So I can click and hold and give some curvature to my line. I want that to go inward maybe a little bit. Oops. And then I can use the direct selection tool to kind of adjust these anchors as well. Move them around. If you're having trouble editing things, you can always zoom in a little bit more. And if I want to change an anchor individually so that the top anchor there doesn't follow it, I can hold down Alt and move it separately. Okay, now I got a cute little nose. Select that nose. Now I'm going to give it a fill. I'm going to get rid of my stroke so that it doesn't cut out. And again, this is kind of where you have to interpret things as functions and not design. So I go ahead and I send this to cut. It will interpret this block of color as just to engrave on the surface of my acrylic. And so I will get an engrave on the surface of acrylic. Now, when we engrave on acrylic, it turns, I lost my examples here. It turns more of a frosty version of that color. So it's not really going to change color like when you engrave on wood, but it will just be slightly recessed and kind of a frosted version of the color. So it's enough to kind of see, and you can pick up designs and you can, throw text on things and you'll be able to read the text. You can throw other shapes and engrave into that and you'll be able to see them. So that is how we indicate basically engraves, is by solid filled shapes. Now, I can create multiple shapes. And if I wanted to, I can give them different values. Create kind of a grayscale. Oops. Okay, and so, yeah, different values will interpret differently with your laser cutter. So like that black will probably be a very deep, dark engrave. And this was probably something more like this lightest gray up here. And so the engrave will be deeper, it will be darker in wood, but in acrylic, it will just be deeper. It's not really gonna be dark, but going deeper will allow it to show up more because then you see more dimensionality to it. Awesome, awesome. Does anyone have any questions on this? Does anyone have any kind of ideas for designs that they're already starting to think about or inspired about? You can kind of.
What scale would you recommend for the earrings and keychains?
Well, I mean, it's a huge earrings. I imagine earrings are going to be pretty small anyway. Let's try to keep it, just for the sake of, our generous co-hosts budget and their materials. Let's try to keep it within kind of a 3 by 3 inch range. I would say that's reasonable. You'll be able to get decent amount of detail within there. That's the amazing thing about the laser cutter is it's super precise, and you're able to get really good detail. One thing to be aware of, you can go thinner, but try not to have lines that are next to each other that are thinner than like 1/8 of an inch. So let's say, actually that bridge was a good example. I'm going to go into shapes here, or into a Dianthus file. Now there is a little bit of material loss that occurs when you're going and following these lines and cutting out your material. So good thing that you brought that up, Megan, size and all that. Consider your spacing on things like this here. So if you don't really have, Illustrator isn't the greatest at being able to pull dimensions quickly from things. So one way to judge shapes is to create another shape. So I'm going to go ahead and create this rectangle tool. Use the rectangle tool, I should say, and drop a rectangle there. Now I can select that rectangle. And up here on the top, remember this is kind of our information bar. You can press transform. I'm in points. Okay, so that's okay. If you ever want to change the values that you're operating in, we can go to view. We can go down to rulers, show rulers, and then I can right click on the ruler and change whatever unit I want for measurement. So I'm going to operate in inches here. So now I can go to transform and I can see that the width of that is 0.0972. I would probably feel more comfortable in the, again, like, I mean, that's okay. That's getting okay. You don't want it smaller than a 1/16 of an inch. So that's probably okay. Oh, wow, I hit exactly 1/8 on the height. So 1/8 is going to be really safe and also strong as far as acrylic goes, especially if we're dealing with 1/8 inch acrylic. So if you're looking for strength, try to keep your pieces and fine details no thinner than 1/8, I would say. That is for your positive shapes, meaning your actual shape. I can have negatives. I don't know why I would want a rectangle cut out, but say I did. I can have negative shapes that cut out of my positive shape that are thinner than that. That's okay. That's not affecting the structural integrity of this. But again, as I come in and I start to cut this piece, you lose a little bit of material. So just to visualize this, I'm going to bump the stroke up a little bit. So imagine the white is actually your shape now. The laser's cutting in, following the blue path, but it's got a kerf is what it's called, and that's the material, the amount of material loss that happens when you cut something. So it's not like cutting with a fine X-Acto knife and cutting into paper where you don't really lose material. You will lose some material, so thin parts will get even thinner. So keep that in mind.
How big does the hook hole need to be in terms of the loop?
Cool. So if we're doing, we'll have to kind of update files or something, but yeah, you'll have to get me either the hardware or the specs on the hardware in how. But if I would not go any larger than about 3/8 of an inch. Sorry, I work in inches. My head just doesn't work in millimeters. But about right here to allow for the keychain ring to go through. Don't make this space any larger than 1/8 of an inch or any larger than 3/8 of an inch. Don't make it thinner than 1/8, again, because it's going to be small and possibly break. And if you wanted, you can always have a design that is something like, maybe I don't want this protruding. that tends to create kind of a weak snap point. Maybe I just want to put a hole on the inside somewhere here. Again, so the spacing from the edge, the outside of my kind of moon here, shouldn't be any more than about 3/8 of an inch. Don't get it too close to the edge because then it's super weak. I would say between 1/8 of an inch and 3/8 is kind of a safe zone. And that's for keychains. I mean, I'd imagine the spacing from the edge for earrings should be about the same, but the size of the interior hole, I'm not sure what that's going to be. Size of the interior hole for keychains, that has to be, it can be huge, but it only has to be about 1/8 of an inch large. And again, you can do that by I really want to select it, I can just click and say, and type in 0.125, 0.125. Okay. So that's kind of the size of the hole that I need. Oh, my computer's starting to lag. Let me close some other stuff. All right. Any other questions? Cool. No questions? All right. Does anyone have ideas of what they kind of want to start to design? You think, I hope that some of you will be able to kind of play in Illustrator and create your own designs and feel comfortable in doing so. And if not, you know, nothing wrong with finding designs online. You can even do what's called like vector searches. So you can find free vectors. So say I wanted a flower or something, I can type in flower vector and you can download free vectors. Usually those will be in the form of an SVG file. And so you can pull those into Illustrator by just going file open. I think you can even place them like we did, file place. And then with those vectors, maybe that can be the beginning of a design and you can build off of those using the Pathfinder tools that I illustrated. Actually, we have a little bit of time. Let me kind of just show what I mean by that. So bear with me. I'm just going off screen here, opening Chrome. In my search bar, I'm going to type flower vector. Let's say free flower vector. Some you have to pay for. Usually the super nice ones, you're like, oh, I want that one. And you have to pay for it. So that's a bummer. But you can get some pretty basic ones. And if you go into image and do an image search, those will usually show up as my computer is killing me. Why are you so slow right now? Okay. So running this Zoom and Illustrator and Chrome is really messing with my screen here. Uh-oh. I may have lost you all. You still there?
Someone recommended
to turn off your video? Maybe that could help.
Thank you. Let's see. Well, I don't know if you all can still hear me. Having some difficulties. I was able to hear you, Ritika. Share screen is not really.
We can still hear you, but you are stuck with like a blue-gray overlay on top of your Adobe Illustrator. Oh, it's gone.
Oh, all right. There we go. Back in business. Not really. Super slow. All right. Well, I want you all to know that you can feel free to reach out to Megan, Yantha, Rithika, myself, for any kind of questions that you have for designing. I'd be happy to answer via email. Rithika, do you have the ability to stop my share screen here? Because I just cannot get out of it and it's causing me problems.
Yeah, I'll stop it for you. Interesting. It says I've stopped it, but it's still sharing. Your computer's too powerful.
Yeah, my computer's just taking over. All right. Well, if you want to email me, I'm just going to say it. I wanted to write it in the chat, but like I really can't even access any of that stuff right now.
I can send
Feel
it.
free to. Oh man, my last name's so hard. It's just pointless spelling it right now. But Diantha and Rithika, please feel free to share my email with everyone, and they can reach out to me if they have any design questions.
Ditto for me.
Same, yes. Do we have a deadline for anyone to kind of, if they want to send their designs over and have us tweak things before next Tuesday?
I think our set deadline was just going to be like Tuesday itself.
Okay. Yeah, we can go over kind of tweaking during the actual demo and just talk about it.
And see what
we can take a few
worked
examples.
on.
Perfect.
And I will pull up your email and then send it, yours and Megan's emails, and I'll send it in the chat.
Perfect. Well, I apologize for the glitches here at the end, but I hope a lot of you got something, some good information out of this, or excited to go ahead and start designing in Illustrator. Maybe some of you already had known about Illustrator and were using it. And this is kind of like way below your current skill sets, and you already knew how to do all this, but and now at least you know how to output your designs for laser cutting. So.
Yes, thank you all for joining. I can send out this recording later tonight, as well as the submission form for your designs as soon as you work on it. And we'll also reiterate the requirements that we have for designs, like the 0.0001 stroke, or like the diameter of certain things. And you can always reach out to us with questions and reply back to the email that I've sent out to contact you all. Thank you all again. I'm going to stop the recording now.